everybody. So good to see you or hear from you or be in the same digital proximity to you. I am psyched to be doing this workshop again. I am delighted to have been involved with Limited Break in various capacities over the years as a former committee member, as a former mentor. And this year I'm actually a mentee because what even is the video games industry? I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And we're gonna go through a presentation. As Jonas indicated at the beginning, there will be time for Q&A. I definitely welcome all your Qs and will do my best to A. Here's a little bit of an agenda about what we're going to go over today. I'm going to give you a little bit of context about who I am, why public speaking is an important thing to be thinking about, slide design, how to think about speaking in general, and some kind of confidence hacks. So hello, I am a creative industries consultant, which often includes work in the video games industry. It also includes work with all of these companies. I am delighted to have enjoyed a fun and fairly extensive public speaking career that has taken me all over the world. And I've spoken at conferences like these. These are just the games ones, but I do a lot of general talking about technology, design, creativity, all that good stuff. I have been working in and with games since 2009. And a lot of that work involves designing artist-made games programs for museums, because I'm particularly interested in games that can be creative, experimental, non-competitive, very queer, strange, and exploratory. So that often also includes games that don't involve screens and games that use things like physical hardware, all that good stuff. Also more broadly, I've done a lot of work in the creative technology sector. I used to run the art residency at Autodesk, which is a software company where I worked with all kinds of artists, designers, architects to make cool stuff with Autodesk products. So this is actually a zoetrope that's been 3D printed by an artist called John Edmark. This is also a really cool 3D printed piece of the Higgs boson particle, sometimes known as the God particle. And this is a multi-material 3D print. I've also led partnerships at Meow Wolf, which is a immersive experience design company. These are physical installations that have a lot of gameplay elements built into them. There are, I believe, 5 currently in the US, with a 6th coming in Los Angeles. You can see this is a washing machine with a slide built into it. You can actually go through those slides, but the spaces tell a story. Some of the other cool kind of professional consulting work I've done is leading the arts programs for Rolls-Royce, and of course, working on the partnerships team for Dreams, RIP Dreams. You were one of the greats. And leading partnerships with really cool brands like this. Okay, so why do public speaking in the first place? It's very common to have a fear or anxiety around public speaking. Up to 75% of people experience it, which is part of why I felt like it's relevant to chat about today. If we had a chat function, I'd be asking, how does public speaking make you feel? I know a lot of people feel anxious, nervous, sweaty, worried like they're going to be judged. But I think we all know there are opportunities and moments where you need to do it, or you might feel pressure to do it. That might look like speaking at a conference, giving presentations at work, giving speeches at a celebration. But in short, and during all of these instances, you're going to want to be doing one, if not all of these things. You want to inspire, inform, or promote. And when you're putting together a talk or a presentation, it might be helpful to think, how am I inspiring my audience? How am I informing the audience? And what do I really want them to know? What am I promoting? Is it a message? Is it an organization? Is it a way of doing things? But if you're writing a talk and you find yourself lost in all the possibilities of things you could say, you can always come back to these core ideas of inspiring, informing, and promoting. Okay, some of you are probably visual designers, so you're probably going to be even better at designing slides than me, but I'm going to just include a few tips about that. I'm often really surprised by how common some of these errors are, and the good news is that they're very easy to fix. So attention spans are short. Whether in a meeting or you're in a conference or an event, there are a lot of distractions. They might be your friends, people might be hungry, you're competing with their phone. This is both a really good and a bad thing. The good reason it's good is if you mess up or if you aren't saying something perfectly, very few people are going to remember that past that particular moment. And of course, it can be challenging if you really want people to take something away from your presentation and actually remember. So what are some of the tips for how to capture people's attention? Really important way to do that is to package your talk neatly. Part of why this is really important is if you ever find yourself in a situation in which you need to pitch a talk, like you might be doing for GDC, the Game Developers Conference, and you are submitting a proposal for a talk, thinking about how to package that talk in a way that is appealing to potential audiences is really important. Here are some examples. We see kind of versions of these talks over and over and over, but they work. So feel free how to use this. So one is the 3 to 5 things you should know about X, right? That were your topic. People really want takeaways, especially when you apply for a GDC talk or a talk at a big conference. Like the conference organizers want to deliver value to attendees. So having practical things that people could take away from the conference and your talk is really important. Another key way to frame things is things are like this, but they could be better. And this is how, right? And part of that is about telling a story, right? So you're starting with a reference point that a lot of people know about, but you're making recommendations about how to improve a common process, a common phenomenon, a common way to design things. And kind of finally, the context or the frame. Here's how I did this in 3 to 5 steps, right? So people are always interested in process. So it might be like, here's how I made a game that grossed £1 million, or here's how I designed like my automatic cover system in 3 to 5 steps. So stuff like that, I think will always be really popular at conferences. You also want to give your audience a roadmap. They want to know not only what to expect, but they want to know when it's the middle and when it's gonna be over. Same thing about like if you go to a play and you're like, okay, it's Act 2. I know that like after Act 2, there's gonna be an intermission and I'm gonna get to use the bathroom and have a drink, right? So you want to be able to like let people know where they are in the presentation. So here's an example. If I were to give a presentation about my very cute dog, I say, today I'm going to speak about 3 things at the beginning of my talk. I'd say, number 1, we're going to do this in 3 parts. I'm going to talk about how dogs are cute. Cats are also cute. Final section, my dog is my favorite. And she is, but hopefully you will not hear her during this presentation. Another really important and I think pretty straightforward thing to do during talks is show, don't tell. So for example, I could very easily say to you, everyone knows that otters are cute, or I could just do this, right? So I think that people process information in all kinds of different ways, and having a picture kind of that says the same thing as the thing I'm saying verbally is a great way to kind of get my message across using multiple modes of communication. This is another slide I used to use a lot. I don't use it as much now because it's a little old, but I like this because it does a lot of the talking for me. And when I pull it up, I always pause a little because people take photos and they need to read it. So it's good to kind of anticipate when people are going to be taking photos of your slides, and you want to make sure, this is especially relevant if you're doing a presentation in physical space, because you want people theoretically to be taking pictures of your slides, because that means they're thinking about it, they're referring back to them. Okay. This is also a pretty straightforward one, but also kind of important. You want to think about how to use images effectively in your slides. So yes, again, people are very distracted. You want to give them kind of one thing to be thinking about. This looks fine. I love these cute Arctic foxes very much. But really, if I want to make an impact, this looks a lot better when I make the image full screen. And like, sure, if you can't make the image full screen because the image is too low quality or it's too small or whatever reason, you can just turn the background black, right? Because then it looks like that's the size of the whole screen. So that's a fun trick I also often use. This is so important. I ran an event yesterday where a very high profile speaker did not follow this lesson. And I think it really impacted his presentation. But for text, when you're putting text on a screen, less is more. The fewer words you have on a screen, the better. I would say 10, even 10 words is far too much to have on a slide. Because again, people process information in different ways. And if you're saying something verbally and you want people to process something visually, you should be saying exactly the same thing. You don't want to overwhelm people. So if the chat were to be open, I would say, can anyone tell me what's wrong with this slide? So I will just kind of go through this. Well, that's number one. This is very subjective, but this is in Comic Sans, at least the header is. Comic Sans is not a good way to make friends. People have an almost senseless beef with Comic Sans, but also the color is pretty jarring. The resolution is a little bit fuzzy. There is an impossible amount of text. So, okay, so there's no way, unless you are completely silent while you're on stage and your audience is completely focused, there's no way they're going to digest this amount of information on a slide. If for some reason you need to share this amount of text for some reason, which I can never recommend, you want to read the text out loud so your audience has a chance of following along with you. This slide is also kind of fun because it has some of the best practices for slide presentation, and I can share these slides with you, but basically the simpler the better. You want to make information easy to digest. This is not about squeezing the most amount of information into a presentation. You want to work with how your audience's brains and attention work. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the takeaway slide. What is a takeaway slide? You have probably seen many takeaway slides, whether or not you know that. As I mentioned, conferences really want clear takeaways from presentations. And someone very wise taught me to design my presentations to have at least one slide that people take the photo of and put on social media. This is not an amazing recap slide. I did make this for a pitch deck. It has more text than I would normally recommend, but also what I would be doing if I were to be presenting this live is I would animate the bullet points. So you'd start and there would be no bullet points there, and then you would just press a button and then it would identify and segment target audiences would show up. as I'm talking. So if you can kind of hide information and reveal it as you're going through, that's another good practice. And like what I did here, this was a choice. It's not always the best choice, but I kind of bolded key words that I wanted to stand out in this presentation. This was primarily delivered as an email document. So the most people who saw this as a PDF. So that's an instance in which you can add more text. Here's another interesting takeaway slide. I did not do this one. I think it's like a nice example of what a takeaway slide can look like. It's themed very nicely. Maybe a little work could be done for graphic design, but overall, it's got a lot of good information on there. So if that is the way your talk lives on after the conference, that's cool. Okay. So what do you do while you're speaking? As in, like, other than talking and moving your slides, what do you physically do? Okay, what is that exercise? Oh, yes. Okay, so if you are in a space where you can comfortably or safely move around, and you don't have to do this exercise if you are not in a space where you do not want to feel like judged or perceived by others. But if you are in a space where you are alone or feeling relatively safe, it's good for you to, I'd like for you to stand up or even sit up straight in your chair. And what I want you to do, stand up straight, take a big breath in, big breath out. Okay, now I would like for you to walk around the room, and it can just be a couple steps. I'm doing it too. Now I would like you to hold your body or walk around the room as if you are the king or queen or non-binary ruler of everything. So how are you holding your shoulders? Where does your head sit in relationship to your body? What are you doing with your hands? And again, you are king, queen, or non-binary ruler of everything. So that means you are the boss. So what are your shoulders doing? How much space are you taking up? Imagine your adoring subjects. All right. And now I would like you to spiritually inhabit a worm. You don't have to get on the floor. But I'd like you to think about how the least confident person and the most quiet person in the world might inhabit their physical space. So again, are their shoulders rounding forward? Are they maybe kind of making themselves smaller? Move around the room as if you are concerned someone will judge you, or sit in your seat as if you are worried, don't want anyone to notice you. And you are a tiny little nervous worm or hamster, perhaps, if you prefer. All right. And just go ahead and return back to your normal posture. And you are allowed, obviously, to sit and return to normal. Okay, so what is the function of that exercise? If you've ever been in a theater class, chances are you might have done something like that before. But the purpose of that exercise is to just understand how your body shows up in physical space. If you're like me, I would prefer to pretend my body does not exist and that I can just be a brain in a jar. However, if you are speaking in front of an audience, the way you hold yourself does show up. And it doesn't mean that you need to show up like the ruler of everything, but you do want to embody a certain amount of physical confidence, whether it is there or not. So if you are thinking about, okay, right, what is the middle ground between how you are every day, the least confident person in the world, and the ruler of everything, and maybe make some of those tweaks. Remember what that feels in your body before you're giving a big presentation. Okay, so this is also a really hard one. This one is particularly difficult for me. but this is remembering to breathe. Breathing is the most normal thing in the world. And when we are on stage, we might want to get the whole thing over as quickly as possible, but we cannot do that unless we breathe. So one of the things that I do if I am making notes for myself during a public speaking presentation is I will actually make an indicator in my notes. I use 2 slashes that say, right, this is where I pause to breathe. Because breathing is good. And your audience is breathing along with you. So don't forget that. Number 2, also something I have struggled with throughout like the 20 years I've been doing public speaking, because my mind moves quicker than I talk, and that is to slow down. People need time to digest your ideas and the things that you are saying. So while it might feel unnatural to slow down to a pace lower than what you might use in conversation, as we were talking about earlier, people do need that extra time to digest these ideas that you're giving them, and it is okay and good to slow down your speaking pace. Alrighty. Look at your audience. I know this is spooky, but you want your points to land. You want to be connecting with your audiences. So if you can manage it for every, I would say, every 3 lines of your presentation, you want to be making direct eye contact with someone in your audience, because you want that to land with them. And ideally, you should be doing this with different members of your audience. Is the idea of making eye contact with someone horrifying to you? That's okay. Sometimes it is for me too. Here's a good trick. Just look at their ear. They don't know you're not looking at them directly in the eye. You are just looking around them. However, in that moment, that person still feels like you're making a connection with them. And it is just as good. Okay, this is an important one. Consider going off book. So have you ever been in an audience or been to a presentation where someone was just reading from a script and there was no eye contact because they were looking at their notes the whole time, and there was also no intonation because they were just reading words from a piece of paper? I know that it can be really spooky to consider the idea of kind of speaking naturally in front of your audience, but anytime you are dependent on your notes, you are adding a risk to your presentation. So sometimes people put their notes, including myself, their notes in slide presentations, and they rely on presenter view. Sometimes on the day of a presentation, the AV won't work. And they'll be like, oh, we need to share slides as a PDF. You're not going to have your notes. So it's good to memorize when and where possible, but also consider how to use visual cues like your own slides and the pictures or text in them to remind you what you actually want to say. This takes practice, and this is something I had to learn myself, but improvisation, the art of speaking as you go, is a skill that takes practice. So practice improvisation when you can. And we'll talk more about what practice can look like. This is maybe a little bit advanced. I like this one. If you are at a panel or a talk that is in physical space, consider not hiding behind the podium or the lectern or whatever that is that you have your computer on. Again, if you need to be operating your slides from there, if you need to be seeing your notes, it's totally cool to hang out behind a podium. However, if you can get out on the broader stage and move around, you're going to be a lot more dynamic to the audience, and you're going to have a better chance of retaining people's attention while you're speaking. What I like to do is I use my iPad as a remote for slides or an actual remote for the slides. So that way I can kind of like run around chaotically on stage. But this is certainly a matter of preference. Okay, so I believe this is maybe our last section, if not our penultimate section. But now let's talk about confidence hacks. Prepare for technical stuff to fail. I will tell you a story. At Develop, the upcoming video game conference in Brighton, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, but I think 2 years ago, I gave a keynote, and I was really looking forward to it. They put me on the big stage. It was live streamed, everything. You might know that the hotel where they do Develop has been under remodeling for the past couple of years. It is an old hotel. So that means the electrical system is old. It was also very hot during that year. So the air conditioning system, or whatever was left of it, was on full blast. However, they were not anticipating that the air conditioning would be turned up so high that the fuse for my slides and the stage and the lights in the room that I was speaking would go out in the middle of my presentation. It's important for you to be prepared for technical stuff to fail. What are some of the ways you can do that? I talked about the importance of memorizing where you can, but also there are all kinds of ways that things can fail, right? So you want to email yourself a copy of your slides. You want to make a PDF version in addition to maybe your PowerPoint deck. If you made your slides in Keynote and they only accept slides in PowerPoint at the venue, you want to make sure that your fonts don't get destroyed. You want to bring all the adapters and cables that you might possibly need because they might not have them. This is stuff that comes from experience, but just because someone is running a conference, they don't necessarily have a cohesive understanding of how all the tech is set up. So be prepared. Oh, I will tell you another short anecdote. I was talking at GDC for the first time. You would think at the Moscone Convention Center, they would know how to set up a keynote deck. But for some reason, despite doing a technical check live while I was giving my talk, the keynote just was not working. My partner at the time had to run on stage, save my presentation as a PDF while I was trying to vamp my way through the presentation. And then I had to present the PDF. So yes, even at the biggest conferences in the world, things can go wrong, and you just gotta roll with it and kind of expect as many things to go wrong as they possibly can, and then you are as prepared as possible. Here's a really fun trick. I like this a lot. This is called the physiological sigh. This is fairly new for me. This is how the physiological sigh works. And we can do it together. This is a scientifically proven way to reduce stress and arousal. Arousal being like your nervous system being activated. If you feel comfortable trying this along with me, please do. But we're going to do one together. Okay, so we're going to inhale through the nose. We're going to take a regular breath. And then we're going to take another inhale again, just an additional sip of air. And then we're going to exhale through the mouth. Long breath. So the way that works is you are taking a breath in, just one more sip of air in, and exhaling through the mouth. So you want to do that a few times, as many as is useful to you. But it is a cool trick. If you are feeling nervous a few minutes before your presentation, whether it's online, offline, meeting, conference talk, whatever, go ahead and give the physiological sigh a try. It is helpful for me, at least. Okay, this is hard, but as I mentioned, it's important to practice not only so you feel prepared, but also so you can feel as confident as possible. This is unfortunately a horribly painful way to practice, but is also probably the most effective, and that is, I hate to say it, to video record yourself while you are practicing your speech or presentation. I am someone who finds it incredibly hard to watch myself on camera. But if I am presenting as something that is very, very, very important, I will do this because ultimately I'll find out like, oh no, Sarah, why are you swaying at this weird point? Or what is that weird gesture that you do? And for me, it helps me have a little bit more awareness of what I'm doing with my physical body. Again, thinking back to that exercise, like, am I slumped forward? And am I going too fast? A version of this that you might find to be less painful is to not necessarily video record yourself, but to audio record your presentation. So I'm from Southern California. I come from a place known as the San Fernando Valley. And yes, that is where the accent Valley Girl comes from. And so while I am mostly proud of my Valley Girl accent, it is good for me to listen back sometimes to see if, you know, what are the things I'm saying making sense? Again, am I going too fast? Am I breathing? You know, am I really kind of coming across the way I want to? So both video and audio recording are great ways to practice. I love this one. If you've ever been a friend of mine and I've gone to see your talk, you will notice me sitting in the front row or in the second row. Because I want to cheer you on. I'm going to be the person in the audience who's giving you supportive nods, or even asking questions during Q&As when no one is asking questions. So your friends are going to be more than happy to do this for you. However, you might be the person who's like, I don't want any of my friends in the room. It's so much easier to talk to strangers than people I actually care about. Also valid, but it's also pretty nice to have someone in your corner, no matter how your presentation is going, to tell you that you are brilliant, because you probably are. Here's a good example of a supportive audience. When I did this last year, Jenny Kastner, one of the OGs in Lemon Break, does not like this tip. I like this tip. And this is the magical power of telling everyone you're nervous. What do I mean? If you are very nervous, especially if you are doing like a presentation at work, it has been my experience, this might not work for everyone, but if you say that you are nervous out loud, which is okay, it's okay to be nervous, you might find that that feeling of nervousness lessens, or you might find that there are people, you have kind of won over people in the audience during this process. That's because the audience is on your side. The audience does not want you to fail. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, like 75% of people are scared of public speaking. So they are also terrified on your behalf. So remember when I was talking to you about that presentation I did at Develop when the lights and my slides went out? Yes. Being halfway through my presentation, that was for a moment briefly terrifying, but also that was a moment where I was like, I'm living everyone's worst nightmare. They're all on my side now. And so that was a moment where I'm just like, everyone in the room wants me to succeed. I'm overcoming diversity in this moment. And that kind of helped me move. Did I say adversity? I hope I said adversity and not overcoming diversity. But this is, and so I knew that everyone was on my side in that moment. And that's what kind of gave me the momentum to move forward. So please just like remember, like when you're nervous, that people in the room like want you to succeed. So it's understandable that you're nervous about whatever presentation you're giving, but they are there for you. Okay. This is my takeaway slide. And I'm going to go through this and then we can pop into questions. But if you take anything away from this presentation, this is what I want you to take away. Package your talk in a way that lets the audience know what to expect and what takeaways they'll leave with, right? Show, don't tell. You decide how the talk lives on when you design your takeaways slide. This is mine. Remember that you have a physical body. Pause, breathe. Humans are compelling. You are compelling. Show up, practice, and prepared. You've got this. And the audience is on your side. Okay. Thank you so much. Let's do some questions. I am perfectly happy to handle questions via voice. Oh, thank you. Those are nice reactions. But if you want to pop them in the Q&A, that's cool too. Vicky Potts, yeah, do you want to just moderate that Q&A for me, Jonas?
Yeah. I'm on it. Great talk, Sarah. Thank you so much. I took lots and lots of lovely notes as well. I am going to. So if you put your hand up in the call, I should be able to let you participate. Is what Google calls it. So I'm going to try that now with Vicky Potts. Vicky Potts, something's going to happen to you. Let's find out what. I've clicked the button. Vicky is on the screen. Vicky, are you allowed to unmute? Oh, your cam's on, but are you allowed to unmute? Google is such a... it's fine. I have to add you as a co-host.
I phased into existence. Perfect.
Yay!
Great. Awesome. It's not so much of a question. I just really wanted to say I loved that exercise with the standing and then the worm.
Yeah.
I was at an event recently, and halfway through the person on stage actually started like a yoga exercise, and everyone was like, oh, my back feels so much better. Oh my goodness. No, it wasn't within one single talk, it was between lots of different talks. But it's really memorable. And I wouldn't want to force it, but it's definitely something I'll take going forward, like getting people to move about a bit just where they, where they feel comfortable. I really like that. And I was walking about like, yeah, I'm a worm. Yeah, I'm a queen. Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're so welcome, Vicky. I learned that in a burlesque class. If you don't know what burlesque is, that's sexy dancing. As someone who really is like an awkward person physically, I really enjoy burlesque classes because it's not, a lot of it is really about confidence. And it's like, as someone who like definitely feels more confident intellectually than I do physically, it's nice to remember just like, oh wait, all of these parts fit together. So yes, I'm so glad that's useful. Feel free to use that.
I'm going to keep bringing people up and kind of putting people back down, and I mean that in a digital sense, not in like an emotional sense. I don't want to put anyone down here. Sarah Marshmallow York, I'm letting you participate. You should be able to unmute and cam on now as a whatever word Google wants to use for this particular part of the call. Sarah, can you try talking?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Hey.
We can hear you. Wonderful. Brilliant.
Yeah, that was a really great presentation. Thank you. I have questions more specifically around the Q&A part of a talk and dealing with, because you don't know what you're going to expect, right? So it's like I tend to freeze up in those kind of, because you're like, you might know the answer, but it's like kind of scary, and then all the information goes out of your brain. Like, do you have any tips for dealing with that part of public speaking?
Yeah. So especially when you are doing a Q&A live, people can get way too nervous even to ask a question. So when I was at Sony, actually, we were advised to not do Q&As as part of presentations, because not only is it kind of like an awkward situation for everyone involved, but questions might come up that you're technically not allowed to answer or might put you in a weird situation. So when you can skip a Q&A, skip it, unless you feel really comfortable doing them. Another good way to deal with it, you've probably seen this before, is a moderator. And that way the moderator can kind of be in dialogue with you as you're kind of trying to figure out a question. So you're not just completely by yourself and like, and they might also be like, a good tactic I had a moderator use is they got 3 questions from the audience and then just kind of let me answer what I wanted, because I'm sure you've been in situations in which someone has asked a question and it's like, this isn't really a question, it's more of a comment. I just want to talk about myself. And like, I've been on the other side of that. What I've wanted to say is, that's not a question. So yeah, having a moderator is a great way to just be like, and also having audience plans to ask relevant questions, to just be like, oh, right, Sarah's going to ask me this question. I know this is what she's going to ask, and I'm going to nail that one. So these are, None of them are like 100% foolproof, but they're hopefully helpful. I see that we have like a question in the chat from Fahamation, who wants to know about dealing with a heckler who was there to argue in bad faith. And so what I would also say is having a moderator there is good to kind of shut things down or even potentially remove someone from the situation. I do have had not necessarily hecklers in real time, but certainly in other circumstances. And I think fire needs oxygen in order to proliferate. So if you're just like, okay, you know, like if you like do your best to not react and move on. And again, this is another instance in which having people who are your friends or someone on your team in the audience to kind of get you back on track by asking relevant questions, or even if necessary, like flagging with conference stuff, that can be a good thing to do. And like, you know, there have been very few situations in my life in which I've really witnessed conference attendees being that naughty. However, it does happen. So like make a contingency plan with conference organizers saying, hey, this has happened to me before. What do you do about this? And that way you can make a plan and hopefully you never have to use that plan. But yeah, I'm really sorry that happened. That sucks. But as a woman, especially a woman in the video games industry, especially as a woman with opinions in the video games industry, I too am worried about weirdos. So you're not alone with that.
Thank you very much. And just a big, by the way, thank you to Vicky and Sarah for coming up and asking your questions. I realize I'm quietly putting you off the back off the stage, but thank you very much for your questions. There's quite a few questions in the Q&A actual area, so I'm going to sort of start reading these out for you, Sarah, if that's all right. So you very kindly kind of talked about the heckler one, so I can mark that as answered. There's a great question here that's it's very relatable, right? So you've got a talk planned, you've got a big event planned, and then you're not feeling well. George wants to know, have you got any tips for pushing through a talk if you're not feeling well, whether you're tired, ill, or just having a sad?
So I guess the question is like, do you really have to do it? Do you really have to do, like, if it's a presentation at work, you might just be like, hey, guess what? I'm really sick. Or if something you actually have to do, you know, you can say, hey, I'm a little sick, or like, hey, I'm a little under the weather, so bear with me. I'm more than happy to just share slides with you or have a follow-up conversation after this. But, you know, you can help set people's understanding for your presentation. You also don't have to accept every speaking invitation that comes to you, especially if they're unpaid. There's a lot of those going around. So being able to say no is good. This is, I don't even know, is this a toxic tip I'm about to give you? In my experience, even if I am feeling really crummy, the adrenaline will kick in. And so I'll be like, I'm on stage now, time to do a thing. And then as soon as it's over, I will go back to feeling like garbage, potentially even more garbage than I was before. But I can rely on my weird nervous system to push through. I don't think that's necessarily sustainable. So another thing I would recommend is make sure you're building in downtime after a talk, because I know that I need time to recover because I am using my whole nervous system. So yeah, I hope that's helpful, George.
Cool. Thank you very much. And thank you for the question, George. You mentioned your nervous system kicking in, and that's exactly what this next question is about. Dommy P asks, well, first he says, this is fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. But then says, I like public speaking, but even if I practice, I find I'm 3 steps ahead, thinking about what's next. So sort of how do you slow that process down when your excitement and how your adrenaline kicks in? Is the breathing enough, or do you think there are other good techniques for handling that?
You're like me, Dom. We have this in common. So as I mentioned, but I might have gone through it pretty quickly, I will make a physical note or like a physical sign in my notes where I'm just like, you need to stop now. You need to breathe now. It's okay to have a drink of water. because it can be so easy to just be like, I'm gonna get all this information out right now, you're gonna listen to me. But also, like, remember, everyone is on a different speed than you. Like, what you're saying is important and is worth giving everyone time to digest this. Another is that, again, I'm bad at this. I'm working on this myself. Pauses communicate gravitas. So if you think of the great speakers of our day and even ahead of our day, you know, we don't think about someone being an incredible speaker because of how fast they talk. We think of them as people who are thoughtful. So it's okay to take time to digest information, and the pauses are actually part of your performance. And so, yes, you are so good at the content, but the slowing down is also part of the performance. That is like, this is a lifelong practice. So congratulations, you've gotten a really big thing out of the way, but this is something to continue to work on. Breathing is amazing, breathing is great, but think about communicating that gravitas when you're doing those pauses, and hopefully that helps.
I like to imagine that the clap emoji is sometimes in between my like last 3 words, and that's I must end sort of thing. Everyone be the emoji you wish you could post on stage. I can see there's a hand up, but I'm just going to get through a few of the questions in the Q&A before we go to back to the hand up. So Shu He, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. You can correct me anytime you want. It says any tips on keeping the balance between improvising and keeping on track with your plans? So sort of, they're both useful skills, but how do you balance those scales?
You want to make sure you're like complying with your time limit. I've been on plenty of panels in which there have been like 3 or 4 speakers. Okay, we're like, you give 5 minutes, do 5 minutes, and then we're all going to do our 5 minutes, and then we're going to have Q&A. The speakers ahead of me have gone way too long, and then by the time it's actually time for me to do my presentation, I have to go super fast. So timing yourself is really, really important, or at least having a good understanding of where you are with your time. When I speak, I have a timer on my screen that shows me how far I've gone, and when I need to like speed it up a little bit. I've also, for a big conference, they will have a big countdown on the screen that only you can see. So just having an understanding of like, right, I need to be hitting this point at 7 minutes or else I'm in trouble. So kind of internalizing that timing is pretty important.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much. And thank you for the question, Shu. This is the last question in the Q&A bit. And then I'm going to go to the raised hand. And then I think we're going to hit 2 o'clock and we're going to call it there, everyone. So just a really huge thank you to everyone who has asked questions, who's been clicking the little emoji reacts. Thanks for being here. Thanks for engaging. You're all very lovely. And it's been wonderful sort of being here and hearing all these tips. Trumpet emoji all day, absolutely. Shutterfinch has asked the question, when it comes to sort of, I suppose this is maybe in the context of being a moderator, because it says doing a talk not on your own, or being part of a panel, I understand now. What tips do you have for sort of collaborating and making sure that everyone kind of gets their moment? So you know those moments where you're like staring at someone and maybe you're not sure if you should speak or they should speak, or you don't want to talk for too long because you know other people have things to say. Like, are there some really good tips or bits of body language or something that you've noticed happens in those moments that ends up kind of leading to better collaboration?
Absolutely. You want to pay attention to who's talked a lot during the presentation, and you might want to deliver a targeted question, or just as another speaker, offer the mic to be like, oh, I'd love to hear from Jonas. We haven't heard a lot, you know, and just literally hand them the mic if you're handing mics around. So that's important. Just kind of reacting in real time. Also, just kind of understanding the psychosocial phenomena of it all. I think there are certain types of individuals based on class, race, gender, ability, etc., for their confidence to speak and take up space in a conversation. So especially if you are maybe a white or cis presenting person, hand the mic to someone who's not. And because those, you know, historically, those are people who have been more scrutinized when they speak or have been given fewer chances to speak. So keep an eye open for that. But a lot of it is just kind of calibrating in real time. And just because someone isn't being as aggressive or going for the mic doesn't mean they don't have something valuable to say.
Yeah, I think I've noticed as well, if you're a junior in the industry, you sometimes don't think like you're as valuable when you're put next to like your industry titans sort of thing. And so I think like having that awareness as well as like that skill discrepancy can hit people really hard. It's something I'm learning as I do this as well. It's a fantastic question. Thank you, Shetterfinch. Now I'm going to come over to the queue and click on that raised hand. Christopher Leach, you are going to be welcome to the stage now. Christopher Leach, you should be able to unmute and webcam. Hello.
Hello, yeah, great session so far, both. Thanks, Sarah, Jonas. I'm definitely not filibustering a question because it's already been answered in between me putting my hand up. Sarah, on relation to breaks, what are your thoughts on deliberately employing like jokes to create a natural pause? Because I still find myself doing that, or like posing a sarcastic question to the audience. To you know, I'm Scouse, so I speak very quickly naturally, but that as a device tends to help.
Sure. And like, you want to make sure if you're confident that your joke is going to have a laugh, you want to make sure that you're pausing for the laugh. And again, kind of responding in real time. It is like, do they like these types of jokes? And your humor varies regionally. So certain types of jokes are going to land in certain contexts and certain type or countries or regions, and certain jokes won't land elsewhere. So, keep that in mind. And I've made plenty of bad jokes on stage. And you know, you just kind of own it, being like, I'm just a goof. And there have been moments where people are like, oh, you're actually laughing at that? Good. This is a great opportunity to pause. So you might want to test your jokes a little bit first. And of course, making sure that, you know, none of these jokes are at anyone's expense, but I'm not worried about you, Chris. But yes, I think everybody loves jokes. So
when in doubt, if they don't laugh, I always go, oh wow, okay, tough room. And then you kind of putting it back on them. That always seems to be helpful. Thank you for the answer.
Or you just drop your mic and leave it.
I'm just a goof is something I'm just going to tattoo, I think, on my forehead, just so everyone just gets that straight up. You know what I mean? Don't need to tell the silly jokes. That pretty much brings us to 2 o'clock. Thank you, Christopher, for your question, and for validating comedy here in this space. Yeah. We mentioned improv earlier, and yeah, something we were talking about earlier is just how much improv weirdly fits into this genre of topic and things like that. Even if you find improv comedy to be one of the difficult ones, it's good for public speaking. Cool. Well, that's 2 o'clock. So Sarah, do you have any final, you know, big F final thoughts, words, sentences, URLs that people should click on, initiatives that people should Google, anything like that?
Yeah. So I think one of the things I really love about Limit Break is that everyone is there because they want to be, and they want you to reach out and talk to them. So that being said, by all means, if you have any questions, whether they are mentoring questions, public speaking questions, or just kind of questions about the work that I've done or the stuff that I talked about today, give me a shout. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I have added 2 links for the companies that I run. One is for me and my consulting work. One of them is for my other company that I run with my colleague Marie Fulston. I would invite me to come speak, or let me know what's going on with you in your life, and say hi if you see me around, because the Limit Break community is fantastic. And thank you so much, Jonas, for having me. Thank you so much, Limit Break. It's a delight, and I look forward to staying in touch with you all.
Wonderful stuff. Before we go, audience members, I have a bit of admin I'm going to ask you to do. You can't message in the chat, but can you read the chat? Because this one's been bothering me. Thumbs up, great. So you can see the links that Sarah has shared. Wonderful. And I'll make sure that they go into the Slack later as a little bit of like a wrap-up thing. So if you've missed those links today, or you're just not in a position to click on it, maybe you're like me and you watch a lot of events while you do the washing up, because what else is going to occupy your brain when you're looking at soap spuds? Then there'll be a Slack channel. The help events channel they'll go in there. Thank you very much, everyone. I am going to bring the recording to an end here. If you're watching the recording of this, I hope this has been a useful and fun thing. Thank you for watching us from the future. That's so cool. But goodbye for now.